It is the evening of Sunday, August 15th, 1971. You are sitting in your living room. You are watching the most popular show in America, Bonanza. The world feels relatively stable. The economy is a bit shaky, sure, but the rules of the game are still the rules. A dollar is a dollar. It's as good as gold. Suddenly, the screen flickers. The show is interrupted. The seal of the President of the United States appears. Richard Nixon sits at his desk. He looks tense. He begins to speak about protecting the dollar. He uses words like speculators and stabilization. It sounds like standard political noise. But then he drops the bomb. He says, quote, "I have directed Secretary Connolly to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold." Temporarily. That word was the single greatest lie in modern economic history. That temporary measure is now over 50 years old. In that brief television broadcast, the United States government did something unthinkable. They defaulted on their debt. They declared bankruptcy to the world, but they didn't call it bankruptcy. They called it the new economic policy. At that exact moment, the anchor of the entire global economy was cut loose. The world shifted from a system of money, something with tangible value, to a system of currency, something that exists only because the government says so. If you wonder why you can't afford a house on a single salary like your grandfather could, if you wonder why the cost of living keeps rising while wages stay flat, if you wonder why the debt is $34 trillion, it all traces back to this specific Sunday night in 1971. To understand the betrayal, you have to go back to the promise. You have to go back to 1944. World War II was ending. The major powers of the world met at a hotel in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, to design the post-war financial system. The United States was the king. We had the factories, we had the army, and most importantly, we had the gold. The U.S. held 2/3 of all the monetary gold in the world. So, a deal was struck. The Bretton Woods Agreement. The world would use the US dollar as the global reserve currency. Every other currency, the franc, the pound, the mark, would be pegged to the dollar. And the dollar would be pegged to gold. $35 equaled 1 ounce of gold. It was a contract. The US promised the world, hold our paper dollars. They are as good as gold. You can bring them to the US Treasury anytime and exchange them for the yellow metal. For 20 years it worked. The world rebuilt. Trade flourished. The dollar was king because the dollar was a receipt for gold. But then the politicians got greedy. They forgot the golden rule: you cannot print gold. In the 1960s, under President Lyndon B. Johnson, the U.S. embarked on a massive spending spree. We had the guns and butter policy. We wanted guns, fighting the Vietnam War, which was becoming incredibly expensive. And we wanted butter, the Great Society social programs at home. How do you pay for a war in a welfare state at the same time without raising taxes? You print the money. The Federal Reserve began printing billions of dollars to pay the bills. But remember, every dollar was supposed to be backed by gold. As the pile of paper dollars grew taller, the pile of gold in Fort Knox stayed the same. The ratio was broken. By the mid-1960s, there were far more paper claims on gold circulating around the world than there was actual gold to honor them. It was a classic bank run waiting to happen. The U.S. was writing checks it couldn't cash. And the first person to call the bluff was the President of France, Charles de Gaulle. De Gaulle was smart. He looked at the numbers. He saw the U.S. printing money to buy up European companies and fight wars abroad. He famously called it America's exorbitant privilege. We could print money for free, while everyone else had to work for it. So de Gaulle did something bold. In 1965, he announced that France would no longer accept paper dollars. He wanted the gold. He started sending French Navy ships to New York Harbor. They would dock, unload pallets of paper US dollars, load up crates of American gold bars, and sail back to France. It was a raid, and it wasn't just France. Switzerland followed. Spain followed. The world realized the dollar was losing value, and they wanted to cash out before the vault was empty. The gold began to bleed out of America. In the 1950s, the U.S. held over 20,000 tons of gold. By 1971, that number had dropped to 8,000 tons. The alarm bells were ringing in the Treasury. If the run continued, the United States would have zero gold left. We would be exposed as insolvent. The panic inside the White House was palpable. Nixon was facing an election in 1972. The economy was slowing down, inflation was rising, and the world was demanding the one thing he was running out of. He had two choices. Choice A: defend the dollar, stop printing money, cut spending, raise interest rates. accept a deep recession to prove to the world that the dollar was sound. This was the honest path. It was also the path that would lose him the election. Choice B, break the promise. Close the gold window. Tell the world that their dollars were now just paper. Refuse to pay. Nixon chose choice B. On the weekend of August 13th, Nixon summoned his top economic advisors to Camp David. It was a secret meeting, just like Jekyll Island 60 years before. They argued for 3 days. The chairman of the Federal Reserve, Arthur Burns, begged Nixon not to do it. He warned that closing the gold window would unleash inflation and destroy America's reputation. He said, "Pacta sunt servanda," agreements must be kept. But the politicians won. John Connolly, the Treasury Secretary, famously told the Europeans, "The dollar is our currency, but it's your problem." They drafted the speech. They decided to stiff the world. When Nixon went on TV that Sunday night, he framed it as a patriotic move against international money speculators. He made it sound like he was defending the American worker. He lied. He wasn't defending the worker. He was defending the government's ability to print unlimited money. By severing the link to gold, he removed the last restraint on government spending. Up until that moment, the government had to be careful. If they spent too much, they lost gold. After that moment, the handcuffs were off. That Sunday night was the end of the era of honest money. And as the sun rose on Monday morning, the chaos began. The stock market rallied because Wall Street loves easy money, but the regular people, they had no idea that the money in their savings account had just been fundamentally changed from an asset into a ghost. In the weeks after Nixon's announcement, the world waited for the dollar to collapse, and it almost did. Without gold backing it, the dollar was just a piece of green paper with a dead president on it. Why would a German factory owner or a Japanese shipbuilder trade real goods for paper that the U.S. government could print by the trillion? Trust evaporated. Inflation in the U.S. skyrocketed to over 12%. The price of oil quadrupled. The system was dying. The U.S. government realized that if they didn't find a new way to make the world want dollars, the American empire was over. They couldn't use gold anymore. So, they decided to back the dollar with something else, something even more essential than gold, oil. In 1974, Henry Kissinger, Nixon's Secretary of State, flew to Saudi Arabia. He made a secret deal with the House of Saud. The terms were simple. The United States would provide military protection and weapons to the Saudi royal family, keeping them on the throne forever. In exchange, Saudi Arabia agreed to do one thing. They would price their oil exclusively in U.S. dollars, and they would refuse to accept any other currency. This was the birth of the petrodollar, and it saved the system. Think about the genius of this. Every country in the world needs oil. To buy oil, you now needed U.S. dollars. To get U.S. dollars, you had to sell your goods to America. Suddenly, there was a permanent, artificial demand for the dollar. It didn't matter if we printed too much money. The world had to absorb it, or the lights would go out. We forced the world to subsidize our standard of living. But while the petrodollar saved the government, it destroyed the American middle class. This is the part of the story that explains your life today. If you look at any economic chart, wages, GDP, housing prices, they all follow a steady line for 100 years. And then, they break. This phenomenon is called the Great Divergence. Before 1971, as productivity went up, wages went up. If a worker made more widgets, he took home more pay. The system was fair. A single income could buy a house, 2 cars, and support a family of 4. After 1971, productivity kept going up. We got computers, we got the internet. We became more efficient than ever. But wages, they flatlined. Where did the money go? If we are producing more, but getting paid the same, who took the difference? It went to the assets. It went to the stock market. It went to real estate. It went to the people who own things, not the people who work for things. When money is tied to gold, it retains its value. When money is unchained, the government prints it to pay its own debts. This new money enters the system through the big banks and corporations first. They get to use it while it's still fresh. By the time it trickles down to your paycheck, prices have already risen. This is why your grandfather could buy a house for twice his annual salary, while today, a house costs 10 times the average salary. It's not that houses are better. It's that the money is broken. We have moved from an economy of production to an economy of financialization. In 1971, the financial sector was a tiny part of the economy. Today, it is the economy. We don't make things anymore, we trade paper. And the debt went vertical. Without the discipline of gold, Congress discovered they never had to balance a budget again. In 1971, the national debt was $400 billion. It seemed huge at the time. Today, it is $34 trillion. We are adding $1 trillion of debt every 100 days. This is the mathematical inevitability of a fiat currency system. To keep the illusion going, you have to print more money to pay the interest on the old money. It is a hamster wheel that spins faster and faster until the hamster has a heart attack. We are now living in the final stages of the 1971 experiment. The petrodollar system is cracking. Saudi Arabia is now selling oil to China for yuan. The BRICS nations are building their own payment systems. The world is tired of holding our devalued paper. Nixon promised that the suspension of gold was temporary. He lied, but history tells us that all fiat currencies are temporary. The average lifespan of a paper currency unbacked by assets is 27 years. The US dollar has lasted 53 years since 1971. We are living on borrowed time. So what happens when the music stops, when the world rejects the dollar? All those trillions of paper bills currently circulating overseas will come rushing home. It will trigger an inflationary storm unlike anything we have ever seen. The generation that lived before 1971 remembers what sound money felt like. We have forgotten. We think inflation is normal. We think working 2 jobs to survive is normal. We think boom and bust cycles are normal. They are not normal. They are the symptoms of a crime that was committed on a Sunday night in 1971. The dollar didn't die a natural death. It was murdered. And until we return to money that cannot be printed by politicians, the crime scene will continue to grow. In the next video, we will explore the solution. If the dollar, the euro, and the yen are all sinking ships, where is the lifeboat? Is it gold? Is it Bitcoin? Or is it something else entirely? The ledger of time is balancing. Make sure you are on the right side of it. Subscribe.